everyone. My name is April Levitt, and I'm a partner and coach at The Personal Coach. We provide customized one-on-one business coaching to financial advisors and their teams. And I'm very excited today to have Kim Poulin with me, who's also a coach and our HR specialist. She focuses on hiring, HR, productivity, coaching, and all of those things. So today we really wanted to talk about performance management. And this is the time of year when people are thinking about doing annual performance reviews and appraisals, and we get a lot of questions from our clients about this at this time of year. So we thought we'd do a short video just to explain what is performance management anyway, why should we do it, why should we have a formal process, how often should we be giving feedback to our team members, and then we're going to walk you through the process that we recommend for actually providing a performance evaluation to your team, and we'll share with you some of the tools that we have available for you to put this process into place in your business. So Kim, I'll turn it over to you and just want to know, how would you define performance management? What is it anyway?
Perfect, no problem. Hello, everyone. Performance management is really like an ongoing process of setting, measuring, and really managing a person's behavior and work performance over a period of time. So we want to do this because the firm themselves are going to have strategic objectives that they want to have filled, and it's the employees that help fill them. Employees are also going to have goals that they want to make sure they are meeting in the process of work. And so that's the main reason to have performance appraisals. Now, that's the main reason for performance management. I wanted to say, though, that performance evaluations are a very key tool as part of performance management. I also want to say that you might be wondering who's going to do this performance management. Well, in financial services, we've got the advisor, and some teams that are large enough will also have an operations manager. So whoever is the leader amongst the two of them, they are going to be the ones that will be responsible for performance management. Ongoing communication throughout the year is really important. That puts a little bit less weight on an annual performance evaluation, for example. And if there's anything that's maybe kind of going offside, any performance types of negative performance behaviors, they can be dealt with right away. So I like to say that as much as the performance evaluation is very key, giving feedback ongoingly, if that's a word, throughout the entire year is really important. Communicating throughout the year, dealing with things as they arise, very important. And then when it comes time for this annual performance evaluation, it can be more like a conversation and be done quite easily. Now, April, I know that we both believe it's important to have something formal. So to share your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, and we often get a little bit of pushback on this because sometimes advisors have come from larger organizations where they had to do, a written performance appraisal with the, that was kind of maybe scary, or, they didn't like doing it. It's sometimes uncomfortable giving feedback, especially if it has to be unpleasant feedback. And so, and even when teams are small, sometimes we find that advisors don't really want to sit down and do a performance, a formal performance evaluation of a team member. But what we find is that, especially as the team starts to grow, it's important to put some structure in place so that we make sure it's not missed. So one of the things that we find happens is we'll go in and talk to team members and say, do you get any feedback on your performance? And the advisor may think they're giving feedback, but the team member's not aware of any feedback because you haven't actually sat down and had a separate feedback meeting or a performance conversation at some point throughout the year. So it's very important from a team member's point of view, and especially to, again, to do it formally, and especially if they've come from a larger organization where they're used to having some kind of process in place for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so some of the real purposes for doing an evaluation would include things like providing feedback on past objectives, assuming that there were some in place. Also, just things like focusing on the strengths and the weaknesses of the team member when it comes to performing the actual job, as well as it's an opportunity to understand the job satisfaction, how satisfied someone really is with their role. So you can take time and discuss that. The other thing that I that is important here is the main focus, though. Even though I've said what I've said, the main focus is really on improvement, opportunities for improvement. Good reviews are a combination of the employee meeting the firm's needs while at the same time the firm meeting the needs of the employee. And all together, then everyone can meet the needs of the client, which of course is extremely important. April, you've got some other thoughts on frequency for these.
Yeah, and I think it's very good to do the formal review or evaluation or whatever you're going to call it. Sometimes I even just like to think of it as a conversation at least once a year where you're sitting down in a separate meeting, a formal environment to do that. Sometimes we see two models for that. It could be at this time of year, near the end of the year, or sometimes teams will do it around the anniversary and the employment anniversary of people. So after their 1 year, if that was May, then you'll do it in May. So teams do it a little bit differently. If this is new for you, you may just want to start and say, okay, we're going to do them all in November or December or something like that. But again, as you mentioned before, it's very important that this isn't the only time that you're giving feedback, and especially if it's improvement feedback that's needed. So you should be having, as well as the once a year, or maybe some firms do twice a year, but at least once a year, formal appraisal that you're giving feedback to the team member throughout the year. And this will also depend somewhat on the stage of employment of the person as well. So if you've got a relatively new person and you're in training mode, well, you should be checking in with that person on probably almost daily basis. And then even for new people for their first year or two, whether that's a new associate advisor or a new admin person, that someone is having a weekly check-in with every team member. And that's been shown. There's studies behind that showing that that is a very good model. And it doesn't have to be very long. That could be a 20 or 30-minute conversation. And we almost like to position it like a coaching conversation where you're asking things like, what went well last week? What were your wins? What were some of your challenges? How can I help you? And just making sure that you're spending some time each week to check in with people. And again, this is really important, especially for people that are newer. And then if you're having any performance challenges with people, so if they're not, they're doing something incorrectly or something, making mistakes or things like that, that needs to be dealt with immediately. So that feedback should be given on, as soon as possible after, whatever the incident is that happens. And I love Brene Brown. She has a saying when she's talking about giving feedback to people that clear is kind. So we want to make sure that we are, being very clear about what's happening, what's the problem, what's the impact that it's having on you as the team leader or advisor and the rest of the team, and maybe even clients. So it's important that is done throughout the year. Sometimes I'll just mention as well that sometimes performance evaluations or this process is tied into that compensation review, but not necessarily. And Kim, I don't know if you have any other comments about that, whether do we tie these in with compensation or not?
Yeah, well, traditionally, they most certainly are. And in fact, there are some teams that try not to do that, but it's quite hard because anyone who's been working feels as though compensation reviews are going to need to be attached to that. So sometimes it can be, I'm not saying it's a lot of work, but there's some preparation and so on that the advisor or the ops manager needs to do for this. And if they're also thinking about compensation at the same time, then that just adds kind of another level of things they need to think about. What's best, I think, is to have that performance evaluation and also annually, and also have an annual salary discussion. It makes sense for it to happen a little bit later after the performance evaluation, in my opinion. And that's what I seem to see the most. Is that.
Okay.
So
can you walk us through, Kim, then what's the process that you typically would recommend for a team to go through their performance evaluation process?
Exactly. Okay. And there's no doubt that teams need a process on this, which I'm reminded of one of our beliefs at the Personal Coach is that process and structure will set you free. There's no exception here. It's the same thing. So we've got a 4-step process that we recommend. And the first step is really about doing the evaluation, completing evaluation forms. So in this step, You've got the person that's being evaluated completing a form, but you also have those that are going to be evaluating that person completing the same form. We like to use the same form to keep it simple. That's easy to do because if, for example, one of the questions for the team member being evaluated is something like, what were your 3 biggest achievements this year? They'll answer it accordingly. And the evaluator, the other person, would think to themselves, okay, what do I think were the 3 largest achievements for that individual? So it's very easy to handle that. So that's step 1. And also, in larger teams, you may have more than one person doing the evaluating. So it's up to the person who's going to be delivering, let's say, delivering is an okay word, or having the meeting with the employee. It's up to them to make sure they gather and assimilate the information from the other people that are evaluating them. Even if it's just not a formal, not like someone helping out, but not formally filling out the entire form, but just other people on the team, you can get some feedback from them as well as you go into the meeting. So that was actually step 2, is to really assimilate all the information. Step 3 is actually to hold the interview itself, hold the meeting itself. And step 4 is to make sure that you document and put this information into the employee's file. One thing that I like to do too is have a little summary document that gets created. That is optional. And if you're interested in seeing a sample of that optional summary document, please reach out to us. Let us know if you'd like to see that. Now, I want to share a few more comments with respect to the performance evaluation, a couple of other tips and things that are important. And one of those things, very, very key, is that there is a job description in place to begin with. Without a job description, it's pretty tough to evaluate someone's performance. So we're very, very big believers in having that as a very foundational item for more than one reason, but definitely performance management is one of the reasons.
And I'd say, Kim, to add to that, it's a good time to review the job description, even in that performance, to see, like, is that person still doing those same things, or are there some changes? Are there some things that need to be deleted or added? And it can also be helpful to see, to start assessing, when do we need a new team member as well? So
yeah, great point, April. Yes, absolutely. And I don't think you had said this, but it can also be helpful for the larger teams to have more than one person actually in the meeting, in the performance evaluation meeting itself. It's always good to have more than one people aware of what's going on in that type of meeting. And so that can be a good idea. And April, I know you did kind of allude to this, and I like to use the word sandbag because I know over the many years I've heard that word being used in particular in the insurance business. But point is here that you never want to sandbag feedback, especially negative feedback. You don't want to hold that for the performance evaluation. That's
save it all up.
That's not a good thing to do at all. I wanted to also share that I do myself, I actually administer this process for one team right now, and we've been doing that for quite a few years. And Julie Leith is also one of our other coaches, is also considering having me do that for a team where the operations manager is now retired, and they're not sure that they're going to replace that particular person. So I just want to tell you a little bit about this. So basically, I'm administering it. So they still have to fill out the evaluation forms, both the evaluators and the person, the team members being evaluated. But then I'll compile all that information, and I will actually hold the meeting with the individual team members. Now, to be fair, this is a very high performing, intact team that's been together for quite some time. So there really haven't been any negative issues or much like that to deal with. But then what I do after having that is I'll have a conversation with the leader of the organization, providing feedback to him about what I have discovered. And he will then go ahead and apply or implement or take any actions that he thinks are necessary. Again, with this team, they haven't been any, disciplinary actions or anything, but he gets ideas of what to do to continue to provide great value to the employees. So that's one thing. And it was actually with this team too, where I started to do a little extra during the pandemic. We wanted to know how people are feeling. How are they feeling about their well-being, their morale on the team. And then I would ask them questions about communication and culture and so on. These are questions that I don't have an evaluator fill out. I simply ask directly to the person during the time of an evaluation. Now, April, did you want to show?
Yeah, so I'll show a couple of the tools right now that we have available if you're looking at implementing performance evaluations and you don't have something. So we have a couple of different samples. So the one that's very simple that we like to recommend, I like to use with my clients, is very simple. So it's basically just got some open-ended questions for, again, both the team member and the evaluator to complete, which, would look at what were some of the accomplishments from the last review or last year, what were your contributions, what are things that need to be improved, and things like that. So we're happy to send that out if you would like it. We also have another one that has some scoring or rating system on it as well for some of the typical factors that we would look at in rating a person. So Kim, do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Okay, sure. You didn't want to bring that one up then, April?
Oh, can you not see that?
Oh, I see the original one, the one that you like the best. I really do enjoy the one that has a bit of a rating. Now, what's interesting is you can do a combination of, once April pulls this up, I'll explain what I'm referring to about a combination. You don't actually have to have a rating system, but this one that does have the rating takes into consideration a number of factors, things like professionalism, teamwork.
So this is the one that we will also recommend that does have a bit of a rating system on some standard areas. So Kim, do you want to just chat about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So this is one where we're being a little bit more specific, and there's a number of different areas here. I'll get you to scroll down in just a second, April. Here you can be ranking things such as job knowledge, accuracy, communication, initiative, attendance if need be. That one was kind of put in there just maybe about 2 years ago for one team in particular we were having a bit of an issue with, and thought we'd kind of get that in at that point, and we've kept it in there. But that's a good point too. You can customize these. You can really, even if you don't like the rating system, you could decide to have some extra questions on the one that April showed earlier that are specific around accountability or teamwork or feedback or anything. So we do have, the point here is that we've got two really great tools, one without a ranking system, one with, and we're happy to also help you customize anything that you might think you need.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the examples of customizing we just did for one of the teams that I work with, they did want to, they do a performance evaluation process with their team, but they wanted to do an anonymous team survey to find out a little bit more about the questions that Kim was talking about earlier around morale and things like that. So we helped them administer an anonymous survey just to get a little bit more information in a safe format for people, in case they were scared to bring some things up at their at their performance evaluation with their leader. So so that worked really well.
Great. And a good point. So not only can you be having these formal documents for performance evaluations, but you also can create little surveys. It's a good time to have them around the same time that you're doing the performance evaluations, although absolutely not necessary. Okay. It just gives you some more information.
Yeah. So the final thing, Kim, I wanted to ask about, many of our teams that we've worked with have done DISC, D-I-S-C, the behavioral evaluation tool. And so I'm just wondering, how does that fit in to this process? What should teams that have done DISC do to implement that as part of their feedback process?
Absolutely. The key thing there is to pay attention to to the information that you have. If you have participated in integrating the DISC system into your team. So by that, I mean things like, if you know you will know what someone's style is. So you want to pay attention to how they like to be communicated with, especially when it comes to feedback. So for example, the D style people, they're really going to be ones that want you to provide the feedback in the moment. They definitely don't want you to be holding it back and piling it up at a performance evaluation. But again, we feel that's a standard rule for anyone, but the Ds in particular aren't going to appreciate that. Our I styles, they're going to want you to kind of keep it simple and not overwhelm them with a bunch of data.
Mm-hmm.
The C's, they're going to ask a lot of questions. So you've got to be prepared for that. And you also want to pay attention to the fact that the S style people may just want to listen and they might not respond right away. Both the C's and S's, excuse me, are definitely going to want to have some time to process as well. Now, so that's just a couple little tips. We can provide you with more. And what we really recommend that you do is go into your Catalyst platform and go to the Your Colleagues section in particular, and take a look there to see what other tips there are for you dealing specifically with, communicating specifically with that individual. That's a great thing to do as well. And one more item here, there's another application of DISC called DISC management. And what that does as for leaders, if you're the leader in your organization, I strongly recommend that you explore this with us. It will help you to improve your ability to really delegate and motivate and develop the people on your team, given what styles they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about DISC.
Okay. Thanks, Kim. So that's the end of our chat today on this topic, but we do have lots of other resources available. If you'd like any copies of the tools that we mentioned, please reach out and reach out at confidence@thepersonalcoach.ca, and we're happy to share any of these tools or set up a call with Kim if you would like some help going through and creating this performance evaluation process for your team.
Perfect. Thanks, April.
Thank you.